Okay, here we go. It looks like I'm live this time. My connection to YouTube is maybe broken. Okay. Da-da-da. Okay, I seem to only be on Twitch and not YouTube. Oh, today's stream has been the worst. It's been a nightmare. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. We seem to be live. We're gonna go for it. We're gonna try. We're gonna try and make it work. What should I do? Let's put on. Yeah, I was gonna put on some of the other footage. Let's put some Waluigi. Being Waluigi on the stream on little Harley. How is everyone doing? Who's got questions about this Switch now that I'm back and actually here to answer them? Oh. Yeah, you see occasional glimpses of my chest-mounted rig trying to work on the dark screens. Little details I like. I like that you can charge up a jump without to do tricks in midair without doing a drift. If you hold down the drift button but don't do a sideways input, you do a jump in place, which is apparently part of how you get into doing drifts, rail grinding, and wall jumps. I couldn't quite work out how to do the rail grinding and the wall jumps, but I did work out how to do the flat jumps to get my do my tricks in midair. Which is pretty cool. I like that you can be spamming tricks rather than just doing a single trick. And I almost got a rail grind there. Yeah, this is about the straightest on footage I got of the day as well. As the day went on, my bag was causing my chest-mounted phone mount to slightly tilt sideways, so a lot of my footage you're going to see today is at a slightly drifted angle that needed to be corrected in post for AA this week. But yes, in terms of like, I was trying to take on board like places where things felt weirdly smooth in 120 FPS. Weirdly, the thing I kept looking at was the number in the bottom right hand corner of the screen with the slight like shifting pattern over it looked so unnaturally smooth. The hammers are a new item. Yeah, you throw like 3 or 4 bursts of like 10 hammers, 10 hammers, 10 hammers, 10 hammers. And they sort of arc up in the air, but then they stick in the ground for a while, so they create an obstacle you have to drive around, but it's not a sort of permanent hazard. It's an interesting item. I noticed a lot of the routes seem to have like multiple levels of elevation, and like it seems like there's a lot of hidden routes you could be finding on tracks. I see something here on YouTube. Cool. Okay, so I am live on YouTube. That's cool. Does it get warm? Obviously, I only had so long with it in handheld mode. I was playing this at 120 FPS in handheld. Didn't notice it warm. It did not feel at all like it was warm to the touch at 120 FPS, which is nice. In the treehouse stuff, there was a shocking amount of grinding, like curbs and stuff. Yeah, I noticed a lot of that. I was too busy trying to take in the experience of playing it to work out, like, exactly how to engage with those new mechanics. I worked out how to jump on the spot without doing a drift so I could do tricks on a straightaway for boosts. I'm Alex C. Thank you very much for the 21 months of sub. Does Street Fighter 6 have 120Hz and VRR support on Switch too? So give me a sec. I'll pull up my Street Fighter 2 footage. If it has 120 FPS mode, I'm unaware of that. The only mode that was there was 4K. Wasn't 4K. I think it was 1440p 60. It looked real good. It ran at like a rock solid 60 FPS. You can see here like, even if there's a couple of places where like background elements are a little lower resolution, the characters are pretty high res and it runs at 60. As I said, for most of these games, I wasn't able to go into settings menus. There might be 120 FPS mode, I don't know. On handheld, the handheld screen supports variable refresh rate. which I think is just there as a default. So if you're playing in handheld mode, it will always be VRR enabled. But I don't think it's a problem with this one. This was running at a solid 60. It felt great. Yeah, let me pull forward slightly. I was trying to hold back because I was playing against someone who'd never played Street Fighter before, and I was like, I don't want to wreck you, but I do want to get some, like, decent footage. Because, like, infamously, people who've played the Xbox Series S version of this will know there is a graphics bug that makes it look worse than it's supposed to. So, like, with that context stated, I'd be hard-pressed to tell you if this was Series S or Switch 2 footage if I wasn't playing it on Joy-Cons. Like, this is one of the ports I play, like, the third-party things I played during the days where I was like, yeah, this really doesn't feel like there's any compromises were needed. It's just Street Fighter 6, and that's great. Was Silksong there? No Silksong. I wish there was Silksong there. There was no Silksong. Yeah, I realized I was kicking this guy's ass a bit, and I was like, okay, I need to pull back a bit. I need to give this Ryu player a bit of space to learn the controls before I just instantly start pulling this shit off, doing my punish counters on him. Which I know I'm spamming them. Super Yoshi says, do you think Nintendo was going to lower the price? Nope. I think, given the tariff situation, the price not going up is the closest you're going to get to it going down anytime soon. Given that Sony has just increased the price of the PlayStation 5 by £80 in the UK, really feels like they know that people in America will not pay double price for a PS5 after the 125% Chinese tariffs get introduced. So they're raising everywhere else's prices to sort of subsidize sales in the United States, and it really feels like that's probably going to be the global plan to deal with the tariffs to a certain degree on console sales. And as such, yeah, I do not expect the price of this thing to go down anytime soon. Tariffs are now 245% on China. Yeah, this is my point. Prices might go up on consoles, they're not going down anytime soon. Did you get to hear the speakers? What was the quality like? So I got to play with speakers on in handheld mode, but I was also in a convention center with like 300 other people, like, talking and murmuring. Let me turn the sound up and you'll hear. There was noise like that in the background the entire time. So, like, from what I could hear, the sound sounded pretty good out the built-in speakers, but that's me trying to tell in, like, the worst possible situation for me to get a good idea of the audio levels. What the hell was that Dalsim face? It was great is what it was. But yeah, no, if you look at this, this is by far, like, one of the best looking things I played. Honestly, the thing I'm most interested to talk about maybe is perhaps the third-party ports. I'm not a big person for Cyberpunk because of some of the transphobia shit around that game, but I am fascinated by how the port of Cyberpunk runs at the moment. It's maybe the most interesting thing I saw in terms of getting a sense of, like, how is this thing going to handle current gen ports? Which we'll get to it in a second. Reese says, any hands-on time with the Pro Controller? Yes, most of my day was with the Pro Controller. I was playing this with the Pro Controller. The D-pad feels really nice. Pretty similar to the Switch 1 Pro Controller D-pad. A little more clicky. Like, it feels almost like you're going between 8 directions as you rotate between the 4 D-pad directions and the midpoints of them. It feels like it sort of clicks through diagonals, and that's interesting. I like that as a feeling. The sticks feel really smooth. Everything about it felt really nice. I like that the back paddle buttons are in a position that's, like, very easy to press, very hard to accidentally press. The plastic they're made out of is, like, almost satin smooth. It's weirdly soft. It's the nicest texture, like, touch texture that a controller has been that I've played for a console. For Street Fighter 6, there's an input delay reduction mode that runs in 60 FPS in a 120Hz container, while VRR clears up any screen tearing. Interesting. Again, the guy at the booth was like, "It's running at 60." That's all the input he gave me. So you may know more about that than I did. I know it felt really good and it looked. I saw no frame dips. It looked really nice. What are the other people that you know that got to play it also saying the impressions? Most of the people I've spoken to that went hands-on with it the same day as I did had a very similar feel, which is mouse mode, weirdly impressive, did not think it would be as cool as it was. That 120 FPS screen, really nice. It's holding up remarkably well to like big ambitious. Yeah, there's some compromise. We'll go to Cyberpunk next, actually. Like, clearly there is some compromises being made to get shit like Cyberpunk running. But it's like, it's surprisingly uncompromised of a port. Like, it doesn't feel nearly as compromised as, like, trying to get The Witcher 3 or Doom Eternal running on Switch 1 did. Let me get Cyberpunk. Where is Cyberpunk? Here we go. So this is me playing Cyberpunk. I think this was 1080p 30 FPS, which, like, yeah, it's a bit of a step down compared to some of the next to some of the other systems. Yeah, let's jump around to here where I get my gun gameplay. Do you know if the console will have Mii's? Definitely has Mii's. I didn't get much experience with them in person. Yeah, obviously this is like off-camera gameplay, but like this is surprisingly fine. I didn't get footage of this, unfortunately. I played it in handheld at 40 FPS, which on that variable refresh rate screen felt like way smoother. That extra 10 FPS and getting it into the VRR window felt way smoother. But like, yeah, this is so. Could you perceive any mouse smoothing in Metroid Prime 4? We'll get to Metroid Prime 4 in a second. Yeah, so the thing that I think is really interesting about this is, for anyone who doesn't know, this section that the demo dropped everyone into, this is from the DLC. The DLC didn't release on PS4 and Xbox One. This was the PS5 and Xbox Series exclusive DLC. It is the bit that taxes the game hardest that they were like, no, it won't run on last gen. I think it was ambitious of them to go, we're going to make this DLC section that has a hard time running the section we show off in the demo, and it held 30 FPS pretty darn well. Like, I got into, into chaotic gunfights. It didn't really drop frames. It held 30 pretty well. It's like, this is running better than the PS4 and Xbox One versions were at launch, for sure, which is like, those are several years old at this point in last gen, I get it, but like, this is way closer to a modern console experience than, as I say, like Doom Eternal on Switch 1 was. As much as I love that port, it had to make way more sacrifices and took way longer to develop than seemingly this. I asked since I'm thinking of running my weekly Street Fighter 6 tournament on Switch 2, since Amiibo allows for faster button settings to be mapped per user, plus PS5 systems tend to overheat when played for too long. Yeah, so again, I can only talk for what I experienced. I felt no heat off of the system in the stuff I played handheld, and clearly the heat management's pretty good for the docked Switch 2. They had them in like glass cases and they weren't overheating, which, with minimal ventilation on the sides of the glass casing, clearly they're pretty heat efficient. For Metroid Prime 4, did you try gyro aiming? If so, how did it feel compared to Prime 1 Remastered? I did try gyro. We'll get to gyro in a second. To Prime in a second. I apologize that I'm not jumping straight to each game. I'm doing my best to like keep my thoughts on one thing at a time, but I will. Prime 4 is clearly where people's interest is next. We'll make that the next one we go to. Mudkip Gal asks, how easy is it to detach the Joy-Cons? Really easy if you press the button. Really fucking hard if you try and just yank them off. This is my 3D printed mock-up. when I got to test it out, the person was like, just try yanking the Joy-Con 2 off. Couldn't fucking do it. He said, okay, use the button now. Easy as anything. Like, required so little effort. I don't understand magnets anymore. I could not fucking pull this thing off if I tried. Press the button, off it pops off real fucking easy. It felt like the magnet turned off. And, like, I don't think that's how it works. But, like, it felt like that was how it worked. Yeah, let me skim forward. I was trying to get through dialogue as quick as I could, just so I could get to more combat. But yeah, even in the 30 FPS mode, like the quote-unquote graphics mode for this, like this would... Even a game like Cyberpunk, like, ran at a pretty solidly locked 30 in its not performance mode. And, like, that's a very acceptable compromise, I think, to get something like Cyberpunk looking this good and running at a stable frame rate is like, okay, this thing is not going to have as hard a time getting ports for a few years as I expected it to. Don't you accidentally hit the button? Even if you do, you have to put, like, the top end pulls out, but it's still magnetized at the bottom until you pull the bottom half out as well. I don't foresee a world in which you could accidentally have the thing fall off the magnets. That makes sense. You have to press the button and also do, like, a 30-degree angle turn and deliberately pull it away. It's... These are slightly... My 3D printed model is slightly stuck because I applied paint for the purposes of a video, and that slightly made the thing not look correct. But the gist of it is, you press the button, you pull it out so that it's like at a degree angle like this, and then it pops off. Like, it's snaps straight in, you press the button, pull to an angle, out. It is a thing you would find very hard to do accidentally. Yeah, it says magnetic circuit is formed. I don't know exactly what that means, because there's a few ways that could be interpreted. Anyway, let's go to Metroid Prime 4, which I think is, like, I think I've got, like, I've got, like, 15 minutes of this. And we can talk about Prime 4, because I know this is one people have got questions. So, Metroid Prime 4. In terms of mouse mode, there are sensitivity options that you can tweak for the mouse. You'll see me fuck around with some different sensitivities. You can make that mouse sensitivity, like, really fucking high if you want. If you want to play this like a competitive online multiplayer shooter where you're doing 360 no-scopes, you can set your sensitivity that high if you want. Did you try gyro aiming? If so, how did it feel compared to Metroid Prime 1 Remastered? It felt better. It felt more reliable. It felt less shaky than Prime 1 Remastered's gyro. I don't know how better to explain that. Yeah, sorry, I was pointing at my hands because the woman was insisting I had to have my hands in shot. I do then point the thing back up at the game in a minute. She was like, no, you have to film your hands, you have to film your hands. And she was trying to explain every control to me. I was like, don't worry, I understand what I'm doing already. You don't have to tell me, miss. But yeah, it feels like there's a degree of, like, game side consistency of interpreting in gyro that helped it feel really nice. So I was playing 1080p 120 FPS on this monitor in mouse mode. Did you get any more lore for Metroid Prime 4? There probably is some, but I skimmed through stuff because I was trying to get as much time playing the game as I could. Yeah, so left analog stick is strafing around. Joy-Con like this as my mouse. My bumper and trigger were missiles and beam shots. If you lock onto an enemy, you strafe around them, and the mouse no longer turns your point of view, it moves the reticle around so that you can aim for, like, headshots, body shots, etc. You let go of the lock-on, now you're mouse aiming again. The whole game looked fucking gorgeous. This game looks so nice in 120 FPS. Also, this might be common knowledge at this point, but it really bears repeating. Let's say I'm in mouse mode, and then I was like, I find it easier to scan in normal mode. Pick the controller up. without going into any menus, it's already back in like gyro and like standard use the analog stick to move mode. Put it down on the table, it's instantly mouse mode again. Like there's no menu, there's no pause. It's the second it's down, it becomes a mouse. The second it's up, you're using the analog stick. Yeah. So the first thing I did here is I went and just whacked mouse sensitivity right up to full. And now you can see like how instantly I'm whipping around at max sensitivity. It's really easy to set it up so you just do like a tiny little movement and like, you know, completely 180. Yeah, this is me trying to remember how to get my scan visor. Because what you're doing here is, while you're in mouse mode, you are still using these face buttons with your thumb to do certain things, which is why I found, like, for visor, it was easier to lift the controller up, press X, do visor like normal. When I'm back to shooting, put it back down to shoot. Yeah, it took my brain a little getting used to Metroid Prime 4, because the problem was, I've got it in mouse mode, and my thumb is, like, naturally resting kind of near the analog stick. And even though I'm using it as a mouse, my brain goes, there's an analog stick here, that's how I turn. Particularly because sometimes I was locking onto enemies, and therefore mouse movement was moving my reticle, it wasn't, like, turning my perspective. And that led my brain to going, okay, we're not in mouse mode anymore, use the analog stick. It took me a minute to get my head around the analog stick isn't what I'm doing anymore. Don't like, this is a mouse now. Don't try and make it not be a mouse. Yeah, the whole thing looked so gorgeous at 120 FPS. Like, here's the best thing I can tell you for, like, what the frame rate stuff for this. It made me want to go buy a 120 FPS monitor so that I can play this in mouse mode at 120 frames. Something like Mario Kart, I'll probably just play in handheld so I can enjoy the 120 FPS, because that's how I want to play it. But this made me go, oh, I want to use mouse mode, but I don't want to do it in tabletop, but I still want to have that 120 FPS. I started looking at 120 FPS monitors when I got home, purely because, like, Prime 4 made me go, oh, maybe I do like frame rates higher than 60, actually. They're pretty cool. But yeah, this area out here was where I really started feeling like I was playing a shooter on PC, with whipping around the camera, enemies everywhere, going in and out of lock-on. You could... Like, one of the changes they've made to this is, much like, you know, if you play a lot of mouse shooters, however fast you can click that button, you can get shots off at that speed. Like, there's no artificial delay. If you can spam the click button real fast, you can really get some damage out. I think this is me trying to just get some footage of my desire to be using the analog stick. Yeah, you just pick it up. Now it's in regular play mode. When the time comes, I just put it straight down, and it's instantly working again. Yeah, I did get to take the Joy-Con straps on and off as well a little bit. If not, I don't like the strap portion of it, but I'd be totally happy to just, like, permanently have those wrist straps on. Like, they're not nearly as, like, annoying and cumbersome as the Joy-Con straps on the Joy-Con ones were. They're not nearly as intrusive, as it were. Yeah, there you can go. You can see I'm just using it as a mouse, using my analog stick. No settings changed to go back into it. Just be doing my best to get some reference footage, and then, yeah, just pick it back up, straight back into using it like a regular controller. Yeah, so they're really into the idea of lock on to to something, but still aim while locked on. Like, this door is trying to teach you mechanics you're going to need in a minute for a boss fight, which is lock onto the center of the door, but aim at things that aren't the center of the screen. Which is clearly sort of what they're trying to get everyone, like, mentally prepared for. Let me skim in slightly. Oh, the woman kept coming to ask me what my opinion was. She was like, "Oh, you seem really you're adapting to this very quickly. You seem very up on what to do." And I'm like, "Yeah, no, this is my job. I have already soaked in many hours of footage. I know roughly what to expect, but thank you." Yeah, this is the boss fight. It was a little bit of a damage sponge, but it was this was the place where it was really trying to get my head around. I'm going to need to do a lot of pressing buttons while in mouse mode. I'm going to need to jump, double jump, morph ball, transform, lock on, strafe. This was the place where I really had to go, have I internalized properly how to play in mouse mode? So yeah, you're trying to shoot the glowing points when the yellow shield isn't on them. You have to jump over the waves of energy on the floor. Yeah, so I'm like strafing, and I backed up against the corner of the arena. I hadn't realized I put my back up against the corner. So that was my mistake there. But yeah, the lock on basically means that you're not using the mouse to like change your perspective. You're just aiming for the individual things. You can shoot those bouncing the bouncing projectiles coming towards you, which is nice. But yeah, this was a fight that really forced me to get my head around how comfortable am I pressing buttons on the controller while in mouse mode. Because I didn't want to have to like pick it up to morph ball, put it back down once I'd finished morph balling or whatever. Yeah, I continue fucking around a bit with the mouse sensitivity just to get a feel for where I want to be. Like, the highest sensitivity, if you're not using lock-on, it maybe makes sense. It feels a little overkill when you're locked on and fine perfecting your aiming around the screen, if that makes sense. Dandelion, thank you very much for the 46 months of sub for the Purple Penguin Switch 2 subscription time. Yeah, like, this was very clearly this is the start of the game. Have you gotten your head around the controls, boss? Like, this boss is so clearly designed to be. This is the roadblock, the checkpoint for. Are you comfortable with how this game plays? Have you gotten over the hurdle of what the game is asking you for, if that makes sense? Yeah, this was definitely where I was realizing I can just spam the shoot button and really get a lot of shots fired off. How heavy is the Switch 2? It really feels like, considering the fact it's larger, it's the same thickness. It feels very similar to the Switch OLED in weight. It feels. It's hard to tell because most of the time I was playing, there was this big braided cable. We're preventing you stealing this cable. That sort of added some weight, but I got to try one that wasn't turned on but didn't have the big cable attached to it. It did feel like very similar in weight to the Switch 1. It felt more sturdy. Like, with the Switch OLED and the Switch 1, there's a little bit of wobble in the Joy-Con rail. Like, if you do this, it's got a little wobble to it. The Switch 2 did feel like, oh, it's just one rock-solid thing. But yeah, I don't know for certain that it was exactly the same weight. Not holding one in one hand, one in the other, and like real timing it felt about the same weight. There you go. There's me having to jump over the double jump portals. Oh yeah, it's having to work out how to get into morph ball while, yeah, because morph ball I think was the X button. Yeah, it was either X or Y that I was having to press while in mouse mode. That was taking me a bit of getting used to. Yeah, there are 4 buttons under my thumb, and I have to be ready for those at a moment's notice. I can't just treat this as a left and right mouse click. I've got to treat it like one of those gamer mice where there's left and right click, but there's also buttons on the side that your thumb's hitting. And I've never been good at those. I didn't find it too bad here with the 4 of them. Maybe because I've got existing muscle memory for my thumb on those 4 buttons, even if they're now sideways. But it again required a bit of. I didn't have existing muscle memory for it. Was part of the learning process, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think next we're gonna hop over to Dragon Drive. Dragon Drive is maybe the thing I have the most thoughts to share about, that aren't just, doesn't this look surprisingly pretty? Which was a lot of my day was, well, this looks very pretty. Actually, you can get a good sense here when I was talking about like heat management for the thing. You can see this. You can see the Switch 2 here. This is running at 120 FPS. The Switch 2 is in a glass box with just some holes on the sides of it. Did not seem to be having any heat issues. I did put my hand by the side of one of those holes. Couldn't feel any obvious heat coming out. Is there more to Dragon Drive than they showed off, like another mode? If there is another mode, I didn't get to see it. I know that there is like a doing tricks in midair to get a combo multiplier component to it, but the demo was very much learn how to use the manual wheelchair and then jump into just a like a 5-minute 3v3. I suspect a couple of months from now we'll get like a deep dive on it in a direct or something. But now it very much was what is here is what is here. Oh, 1 second. Oh, I do not have the brain space for this. My mum just messaged me to go, oh, I'm very sorry to hear about the anti-trans stuff in the UK. Will you be okay? I'm like, that's very sweet of you, Mum. I don't have the emotional space to respond to her at this moment. That's not what today's about. Today's about the Switch 2, about me being excited about 4K or 120 FPS Metroid in. Alright, let me get Dragon Drive. Did Dragon Drive break before it finished downloading? Oh, can I not show you Dragon Drive? Give me a sec. Can I get Dragon Drive to download without breaking the stream? That's the question. Give me 1 second to find. I'm gonna try and hit download and see whether it makes my dropped frames go wild. Okay, I'm not dropping frames. It is, however, going to take apparent. Oh no. Yeah, we are dropping frames. Okay, we're not doing that. I can't download it without dropping frames. Well, we're not watching the Dragon Drive footage today, apparently. I delayed the stream because I seemingly couldn't download footage.
We are dropping frames.
Oh, okay, we're not doing that. I can't download it without chaos. Yeah. I tried to start the stream while I was still downloading the gameplay footage off of Google Drive off of my phone. And it just tanked the stream, so I waited until the downloads had all finished before I started the stream, but apparently Dragon Drive broke and didn't finish downloading. Any indication there's any more to the environment than Empty Warehouse? The game seems super interesting, but the arena doesn't do any favors. I didn't see anything really beyond what we saw previously, if I'm honest. I'll say this, things that we didn't know from before I played it. The rumble feels really cool. There is a very satisfying sort of click, 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 click as you roll the Joy-Cons forward. That feels like the sort of the spokes and the gears on the wheels like clicking around into place as you rotate the wheel. That feels very satisfying. I don't know what the people were on about who were saying that like the that it wasn't an intuitive control scheme. Fuck that. It's so natural to play. It's literally just rotate on the spot, move forward or back, throw the ball. I could see myself getting really down into that game. Well, if I can't load up the Dragon Drive footage, I guess we go to oh, did I not successfully download that either? I was trying to also download Donkey Kong Bonanza footage. I don't have my Bonanza footage. Well, this is foolish of me. Okay, we can load up the Mario Party Jamboree mouse minigames, I guess. What we might need to do is just, like, I'll take, like, a 10-minute break to download the other footage and then come back, I guess. But yeah, it used the HD Rumble in like, an actually cool way. So yeah, this was one of the other games that had mouse mode, was, the new Mario Party content that was just, like, it used the mouse, but also gyro rotation and also sometimes motion controls. I don't know if there's going to be more to them, but it seemed like there were only 6 mouse-controlled minigames in this expansion. One of them, very simple, it's air hockey. Oh, yeah, this is the thing I wanted to talk about. They had 4 Joy-Cons out on the table for 4 of us to play. They handed me a left Joy-Con too. I'm right-handed. I had to use a left Joy-Con in my right hand as a mouse. It is not designed... It doesn't feel comfortable to hold that way around. It was doable, but this brought up an issue, a thing that I think is going to be an issue with this, is if you have exactly enough Joy-Cons for the number of people you have, you're gonna have the who has to have the wrong-handed Joy-Con to be their mouse is going to be a thing. They had the colors we've seen everywhere else, grey with, like, the blue and orange strips on the side. Like, this wasn't, like, it didn't cause any problems when playing, it was just, like, mildly less comfortable. And I think this is going to lead to some arguments over who gets, like, if you've got 2 right-handed people, they're going to argue about who gets the right Joy-Con for mouse mode. So yeah, this started off as just very basic air hockey. I was Mario. Me and Luigi did pretty bad initially. Until this got a bit Mario Party about it. Did stream end or internet issues? Stream should be fine. Try reset. And today's stream. Lol. Yeah, that's gonna be because I had that. I tried to download that file and it stopped for a second. Yeah, I'm having such a nightmare time with the stream today. I apologize. I'm doing my best. The equivalent of giving your younger sibling the worst controller. Yeah, 100%. It felt like an older sibling had given me the worst controller. Yeah, there's a bit more to this minigame. I'll skim forward slightly. A bunch of Koopa Troopers start walking out on the board, and now it's air hockey, but with, like, a dozen pucks on the board. Which, like, I thought this was a cool, fun idea. I kind of wished it would have been this from the start, because this was where it got fun. We'll skim around a little bit on these minigames. What was this one? Oh, this is one that used the gyro, so you're using the mouse, but you're also rotating the mouse for gyroscopes. You're trying to build the tallest stack you can by, like, rotating. You won't get more things to add to your stack until you put all the current things down. Meaning that you will sort of be forced to put, like, these unideal shapes somewhere in your build. So as you can maybe see, I'm bringing the blocks down and, like, rotating my hand to try and line them up in a way that won't collapse like that. Having to very quickly build the tower at the very last possible moment as tall as possible. So we'll skim forward slightly. Yeah, very simple minigame. I genuinely believe this set of 6 minigames should have been the pack-in. Like, if this wasn't DLC for an existing game, this and, like, the camera minigame, which I'm not going to show because there is a child's unobscured face in the raw footage that I haven't had an opportunity to blur out. I feel like these should have been the pack-in games, is the, like, rather than Welcome Tour, which is very much like a very clinical explanation of how things work, it's like, hey, use the mouse to spray paint these bombs, and then when you run out of spray paint, pick it up and shake it like you're shaking a can of spray paint and have it rattle. Oh, this was good HD Rumble. Shaking the can of spray paint, you could feel the metal ball in the can of spray paint, like, clattering around the inside of the Joy-Con. This was one of the best uses of HD Rumble on the thing, was like, spray paint, spray paint, spray paint. Shake the can and feel the metal the ball rattle around inside the metal, get back to spraying. So yeah. It doesn't matter what percentage you spray a bomb, it's when all is said and done, every bomb, is it more your color or the other team's color? If it's more your team's color, you get the point. Each one will rotate around, it'll pop in whatever color spray painted more of it. You get the gist. The big one is worth, I think, 3 points. What else did we play on the minigames? Oh, this one. This was like playing, that thing with the ring around the metal wire, and you have to move it around the metal wire without touching the metal or it, like, buzzes. You're trying to get toads through a maze without electrocuting them to death, but they have, like, swinging momentum. You're using mouse mode, but you can't, like, move them left to right too quickly, or they'll sway in your hand. Yeah, you get the gist of it. Like, none of these is particularly in-depth games. I don't think any of these are ones that people are going to come back to time and time again. I think they are the best thing I played all day in terms of, like, giving you a really quick whistle-stop tour of, like, mechanically what the controller can do, and making you understand through gameplay what the capabilities of the technology are. I really wish these 6 minigames were just a free pack-in with the system. I don't think they're going to have the replay, like, the longevity of replayability that the actual Mario Party board game content has. But I think, like, if they were free for everyone, I think people would really dig them. So what other ones do I have downloaded? Let me check what else I can show off right now. We've got Toad, Waluigi, really not a huge amount I have downloaded. I really wish I had Donkey Kong and Drag X Drive. I can show you a little bit the viewing angles thing. You can tilt it really far and not lose viewability. Like, I was very impressed at... like, obviously my camera is going slightly out of focus once I get far enough, but, like, for something that you want to be able to set up on the table and have multiple people playing, like, you know, on a flight or on a train or something, a wide viewing angle without distortion is really important, and that was definitely a thing here. Captain Orc says, I'm torn on buying Welcome Tour. I believe it's £5 in the UK. Sorry, Lewis in the YouTube chat says, are there any other games beside Metroid that run at 120 FPS? Mario Kart does. I don't know for other ones. Sorry, let me pull this footage up while we're here. You're not going to see it at 120 FPS, obviously, because we're, I'm streaming to you at 60. This portable gameplay, I was playing at 120 FPS, 1080p on handheld. I don't know for other ones, but I know that at least Mario Kart and Metroid Prime are both 120 FPS, available in you can do both of them in portable or docked at 120. Yeah, in terms of whether Welcome Tour's worth buying, there was some interesting stuff in there, and for a £5, I will get my money's worth out of streaming it and learning the answers to some interesting questions and doing some silly little minigames. I played like 15 minutes of Welcome Tour. Here's the difference. Both it and Astro's Playroom for the PS5 are trying to teach you about your new console in a way. Like a video game. Like, oh, I'm learning while playing. Welcome Tour feels like you are paying money to sit down and take a test in a classroom. It's so sterile, and it feels like edutainment. It feels like you're here for a lesson, and if you have a little bit of fun on the way, that's great, but you're not here to have fun, you're here to learn. Whereas, like, Astro's Playroom was, you're here to have fun. If you learn something, that's cool, but, like, really, you're just here to have fun. Yeah, it feels like a PowerPoint that occasionally lets you... It occasionally lets you... It feels like a bunch of engineers made a tech demo for corporate executives so that those executives would understand, like, oh, I know what the features of the system are now, and understand how to sell this to my fellow investors. It didn't feel like a game. It felt like an interesting thing you show a boardroom full of people to convince them to invest in Nintendo stock. Hey, Pat Peas. What difference does 120 FPS make? Visually, it doesn't look like it's moving any faster than 60 FPS to me. Well, to be fair, it's you're only seeing 60 FPS gameplay. I recorded this at 60 FPS and am streaming it to you at 60 FPS, so you are not seeing half of the frames. It looks way smoother. It's hard to quantify how much smoother it looks. It's little details like the water moving, just look right. The camera feels like it moves way quicker with you, like it's way more responsive. The big difference is in game feel. It is hard to quantify, but it feels like there is way less time between you doing an input and the game responding. It feels like you and the game are way more in sync than you are at 60. The big difference is the feel of responsiveness, as much as it is, oh, that looks unquantifiably really smooth and nice. It is hard. This is the problem with, like, it's the same as, like, trying to explain, like, the glasses 3D on the 3DS. It's, until you're looking at it 120 FPS, it's hard to explain why 120 FPS looks so nice. It just looks really polished. It looks very, oh, this is swanky. Did someone polish this up for me? Oh, this is a treat. That is about the best I can explain it. Incompetent Hero says, apparently Switch 2 Welcome Tour, the Japanese name is Exhibition of Nintendo Switch 2 Secrets. Yeah, like, you need to sell it like it's a fucking museum tour and not a game. That's probably how you should be handling it. Let me put on the Waluigi footage. But yeah, I've got a bit of time still. Has anyone got any other questions that I can try and answer? Because I can't guarantee I'll have answers, but I can try and answer questions for people, having had some time with it now. I will say this while I'm waiting for questions. The 120 FPS thing, it's the thing visually that stuck with me the most. Because, like, 1080p versus 720p, that's, like, twice the pixels. It looks really nice and crisp, but, like, I'm not a huge fan of PS5 quality modes where you get, like, 4K but it's 30 FPS, 1080p but it's 60 FPS. Because, like, I'm always gonna pick the 60 FPS mode. That's always gonna be my preference. I don't mind that Nintendo's offering graphics versus performance modes here, because, like, both in Metroid and Mario Kart, and this seems like it's what they want their standard to be for a while, it's, oh yeah, we'll offer graphics versus performance, but the graphics mode with lower performance is still running a locked 60. It's, do you want 4K 60 or 1080 120? And I'm like, oh, that's, in that case, I might actually use the 4K mode, because 60 FPS still looks really nice. Like, 60 FPS is the standard. I wouldn't want to really go below if I have an option. It's so strange seeing Nintendo take the graphical arms race in a different direction and go, we're not worried about maxing out photorealism. We're going to make the games look as nice as we can at 60, and then go, do you want to turn down the resolution just like a little for 120? Because we can do that. Half the pixels, double the frames. I'm like, oh, I like that. Right, sorry, yeah, chat. Did you get to see it handheld on lowest brightness? I got to play it handheld on whatever the default brightness they handed it to me was. I was not allowed to change the brightness in handheld mode on any of the games. So, I don't know whether this was max brightness. I don't know what lowest brightness was. I cannot answer that. Lichia says 120 FPS is good for handheld mode, but I honestly don't know if my TV has a high enough refresh rate for that. Knows nothing about TVs. If you don't know, then the answer is probably not. If you don't know that your TV does 120 FPS, it probably is 60. Which is fine, because all these games have a 60 FPS mode where it's like, oh, you're playing on your TV at 60. That's great. We'll just like bump it up to 4K, and I'm like, oh, nice. Prime's 4K 60 sounds great to me. I don't have much experience with frames above 60. I don't have a lot of experience with frames above 60, but I will say, playing at 120 FPS did. I said this earlier in the stream. I played Metroid Prime at 120 FPS on the TV, and I got home and I went, how much is a 120 FPS monitor? Because I kind of... It felt really nice, particularly with mouse mode aiming. I was like, this feels so smooth with the mouse. I could really go for playing it like this. Can I buy an affordable 120 hertz monitor just for this? It's selling me on 120. Is the text readable on 4K? Yeah. At least for the Nintendo games, like, it felt very designed for... Because they're designing for... You're going to be playing these games potentially on a 1080p handheld. They scale up the text size to 4K really nicely. How's the battery? I'd heard it's less time than the Switch One. Every game I played had like a power cable like hardwired into it that you couldn't remove. Allegedly the theoretical minimum battery life is 2 hours, which doesn't surprise me when you're running games like Elden Ring. If I play Elden Ring on the Steam Deck, I get I get like 90 minutes. So to get 2 hours for something like Elden Ring, yeah, that sounds about right to me. What I would say is, I think Nintendo's really banking on a lot of people who play the Switch 2 handheld either play it, on their sofa plugged into the power, or have a portable power bank with them, so if they're playing on a flight or something, they can just have it plugged in. It's why there is a USB-C port on the top now, so that you can have it plugged in while it's in tabletop mode. I think their thinking is, don't throttle handheld performance to increase battery life when people would... I think it's sensible for Nintendo to think this way, would rather have better handheld performance, even if it means I'm playing on a train or a plane, I'm going to have my power bank with me, and I'm going to reasonably need that if I want to play Elden Ring on the train. I think that's the right trade-off for them to make. And, like, I don't think every game's only going to last 2 hours of battery, but I think if you're playing this at 120, like Metroid Prime at 120 FPS, if you're playing Elden Ring, and you want to play for more than 2 hours portably, portable power bank's going to be a sensible investment, I think. How do I choose between two things too luxurious for me to have experienced? Does the Switch 2 have a fan inside it, or is it just the dock only? It has a fan inside it. It also has a fan in the dock. There are two fans. There is a fan inside the handheld and a fan inside the dock. But yeah, most of you... Yeah, well, here's the thing. This is why I'm so happy that the handheld screen is 120. Because, like, Mario Kart is, like, the perfect example of a game where it's like, oh, the handheld screen's only 1080p. And 120 hertz. The game will play at 1080p 120. In handheld, you're going to get to experience 120 FPS gameplay. Like, the PS5 can currently technically do 120 FPS for some games. Like, I have a PS5 Pro. Gran Turismo, I think, has a 120 FPS mode. I've never played it because I don't have a 120 FPS TV. Playing this for like 4 hours made me go, this handheld screen's really nice. I would kind of like to be able to play at these kind of frame rates on the TV, actually. It sold me on 120 FPS gaming better than the PS5 Pro did, and I've had the PS5 Pro for, what, like 6 months now. Just because shipping this thing with a 120 hertz screen, it's gonna make a lot of people go, oh, I didn't know I liked high frame rates. 144 FPS is just chef's kiss. It is, it's in that realm. Did Laura get one that fell out the back of a truck? I wish I did. I do have this one, that's definitely legit. You see that very real Switch 2 logo on the back. I have that 3D printed one. No, this was me at a preview event at the weekend. Breath of the Wild on a launch Switch was like 2.5 to 3 hours. Yeah, so it's at max battery drain. It's a little lower than the lowest battery on Switch 2 is a little lower than the lowest battery on Switch 1 at launch. But again, we live in a world where like high capacity USB-C power banks exist, and I think that's going to be. I think most people would rather have the theoretical battery life is a little lower, but I can plug it into a power bank and I can play Elden Ring at a decent. I can play 40 FPS Cyberpunk on my handheld. Is it mini LED or normal LCD? Best I can tell, and I'm no expert on this, I think it is a normal LCD panel. I don't think it's a mini LED. Because if it were mini LED, you would get more inky blacks in full black screens because it would essentially turn off isolated LEDs. Whereas here, if you have like a full black loading screen, it doesn't quite go the like OLED levels of inky black, which would suggest it's one backlight as opposed to like mini LEDs localized backlights. So I'm not an expert, but to my knowledge, it's not mini LED. I still think Switch 2 games in handheld mode and dot mode look amazing to me. But some think Switch 1 and 2 games look bad, and some think Switch 1 and 2 games look amazing. Difference of opinions. Yeah, I think the difference. I think this generation, Switch 2 is going to feel much closer to being in the right conversation. Like, again, Street Fighter 6 and Cyberpunk are the two games I keep looking at and going, if you showed me Switch 2 gameplay and Xbox Series S gameplay side by side, I'd be hard-pressed to tell you which was which. And that's a great place for a handheld to be at, I think. Incompetent Hero says, I've got to say, 80% of the decisions this seemingly next generation of Nintendo itself are refreshingly modern. Yeah, I didn't expect things to feel this modern. Yeah, let me pull that Cyberpunk gameplay back up, because I think this is the one where it's like... I didn't expect it to be as in line with modern gaming. Yeah, in my experience, I didn't care that it was an OLED. In practice, the sacrifice of OLED, totally worth it for 1080p, 120 FPS, variable refresh rate HDR. That was enough to outweigh it not being OLED very much. Thoughts on the game prices? I think it's high. I think it's fair to say Nintendo's being fucking cheeky with Mario Kart. But also, it's available in a bundle for, like, half the price, so, like, it doesn't bother me that much. But I think there is a degree of they're charging as much as they are, because Mario Kart 8 was the best-selling game on the Switch by a very wide margin. No Call of Duty game has ever sold as well as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe did. Like, no Nintendo game has ever, outside of Wii Sports that was a pack-in, has ever sold as well as Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It's the best-selling standalone Nintendo game that's ever sold. I think they're counting on people fucking love Mario Kart. They'll pay it. And I think they're being a bit cheeky, but also I'm getting it as a bundle pack and I'm really not that fussed. Yeah, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold I think 85 million copies. I might have that number wrong off the top of my head. I think it's 85 million copies. Compared to I think 35 million is the most a Call of Duty has ever sold. The most an individual Call of Duty's ever sold is about 35 million. It's somewhere in the realm of 2 to 3 times more copies than the best-selling Call of Duty. And you see a difference between Steam Deck OLED and an Xbox. Not questioning, just curious and dumb. Yeah, generally, the Xbox looks better. Steam Deck, as great as it is, that 800p resolution is a weird number for it to sit at. I think the overwhelming support of third party on Switch 1 pushed them to be in line with modern gen. Cyberpunk Street Fighter. Yeah, the fact that we have Cyberpunk at launch, again, I think this is very acceptable performance. This is like, you're not getting, if you were gonna play on your TV only, you weren't worried about portable play, and you had a PS5, yeah, buy it on PS5. But like, this doesn't feel like a compromised port. It doesn't feel like you have to make excuses for playing this version. This feels like a totally viable version of Cyberpunk on a handheld. And to see that at launch is honestly, like, pretty surprising. Is 12 gigs of RAM enough? It has 12 gigs of RAM, right? Yeah, it has 12 gigs of RAM, which is more than the Series S. What is... The Series S is, what, 8 gigs? Which is usually its bottleneck. Okay, it has 10 gigs. Okay, yeah. 8 gigs. Dedicated to graphics. Yeah, so this... The Switch 2 has more RAM than the Xbox Series S. And the Xbox Series S will technically play every modern current-gen game. And RAM is usually that bottleneck that causes it to struggle with certain things, such as when it couldn't get the split-screen mode for Baldur's Gate. And I'm like... This handheld has more RAM than the entry-level next-gen console. That's a good place for it to be. It's got more RAM than the Steam Deck. That's a good place for it to be. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up on both chats quickly. There are going to be people who buy Mario Kart World and nothing else for a while. Yeah, they are. And honest, that's why I'm so curious for that Mario Kart Direct tomorrow. I want to see what... They've seemingly got another 15 minutes of stuff to announce, and I'm very curious what that presumably single-player content's going to be. I suspect the Switch 2 OS will be lighter than that of Xbox. Yes, there was a fascinating article about this the other day. I forget where I read it. You know when they showed off the game, like, screen sharing, where you could share your gameplay to other people, and it's at, like, 10 FPS, and people were kind of laughing at that? The reason why it's as choppy as it is, someone from Nintendo was talking about it, it was like, yeah, we could have made it smoother, but to do that would have required allocating more of our, like, RAM and processor cores to the operating system. And we decided we wanted to minimize how much of the system resources were taken up by the operating system as much as possible. I might get this wrong, but I believe it's less than 3% is taken up by system. And a single processor core does all of the OS stuff. They managed to keep system, like the operating system, to less than 3% of system resources, which is, like, pretty damn good. Steam Deck 16 gigs, isn't it? Is Steam Deck 16 gigs of RAM? I don't think it is. Oh, it is 16 gigs. How much of it is, how much of it is dedicated to OS and how much is dedicated to game? Okay, Okay, as the amount of RAM used up by the operating system can vary. It can go as high as 8 gigs being used up by the system resources, which is fascinating. I wonder how much of that is to do with the fact that it's having to do, like, the Proton stuff for changing for shader caching and stuff. Yeah, a good chunk of that 16 gigs will be used by the Linux OS. Yeah, it's running Linux plus a shell on top of that plus the game. Whereas it really seems like Nintendo has, like, super minimized how much system performance is going to do anything but game. Lord Gabe taking notes to prepare for Steam Deck 2. Look, I would love a Steam Deck 2. I'm fascinated to see what Valve will do next in terms of the Steam Deck arms race. But Steam Deck will always fundamentally be a PC, and you can optimize for a set of specs, but you will never get the same amount of performance per system resources as you do with a dedicated console, where you are making your build for one very specific operating spec. Is the Switch 2 handheld portable mode more powerful than PS4 and PS4 Pro, or not at all, or is it between PS4 and PS4 Pro? So this is like, it's hard to say objectively. The example I would give is the base PS4 never had a game that ran at, like, didn't really have games running at 4K. Certainly not at 4K 60. Even with the PS4 Pro, you had checkerboarded 4K. It wasn't really 4K, to my understanding, like the old checkerboarding solution. This is a bit of a simplification. The PS4 Pro, if you played games in quote-unquote 4K, you were playing them in, like, 2K, where it was doing, like, basically half of the screen's pixels, of the 4K pixels were changing one frame, half the next. You were doing two half 4K images, kind of, that gave the illusion of a 4K image. Whereas, like, for nothing else, this is doing 4K 60 in first-party titles. It's doing 120 FPS. I think it's safe to say this is more capable than a PS4 or a PS4 Pro. Now, how you compare that to, like, the current generation of consoles, I think the most sensible place would be to say it's probably somewhere between a PS4/PS4 Pro and an Xbox Series. Like, there are places this is... Let me pull up Street Fighter. Street Fighter was the one where I really was like, I would have struggled to tell you this was an Xbox Series gameplay. And there are places that the Xbox Series is gonna get its advantages. If nothing else, it knows it's constantly plugged into the wall. It doesn't have to think about power draw limits that same way. But, like, this is 60 FPS 4K. You know, there's some low resolution textures being used in the background for optimization and stuff, but, like, this is holding its own with Series S really well. You're not going to mistake it for PS5 gameplay or Series X gameplay, but, like, it really does... It does make me go, I could be convinced this was a Series S, and that's pretty cool. Let me move ahead a little bit. Do you think having such a low percentage of resources dedicated to operating system stuff implies themes won't be a thing? I don't think we're going to be having, like, dynamic animated themes, but, like, static themes I think you could have just fine. Did they mention any security measure to defend Jailbreak this time? No, they didn't, but why would they? The reason that the Switch 1 was so easily jailbreakable is because they used the Tegra X1, which was an existing off-the-shelf chip with existing vulnerabilities that they just didn't care about. Whereas this is a dedicated, like, originally designed for the Switch 2 chip. They've learned their lessons about not having exposed pins in the Joy-Con rails that were an easy point of access. They're not going to be able to... People aren't going to be able to go, oh, we know this exploit from the X1, let's exploit that. I think Nintendo has probably put a lot of fucking resources into trying their best to combat piracy, but it'll be too hard to know about jailbreaking for a while. I'm annoyed because when the Direct airs tomorrow, I'll likely be commuting on the London Underground. I can't connect to that new Wi-Fi it's supposed to have. Oh no. Did you get to play free roam in Mario Kart? I did. I don't have great footage of it. I got to free roam for like 5 minutes while we were setting up a knockout tour match. I found like a warp pipe to go through. I found a bag with some food in it that changed my outfit. I thought I saw an NPC I could talk to, but didn't quite get to them before the match started. The type of game matters as well. A one-on-one fighter is a lot easier to optimize around than a big open-world game. Yeah, because that's the thing, is I recognize, like, Cyberpunk is probably the one that we should keep talking about in terms of, like, stress testing the system. And again, in terms of, like, is this more powerful than a PS4? I said this earlier in the stream, this section of gameplay is from the Cyberpunk DLC that never came to PS4 and Xbox One. It only came to next gen because they were like, it wouldn't run acceptably on PS4 or PS4 Pro. It's running at a pretty good 30 here, which I'm like, it's clearly in some ways outperforming PS4 and PS4 Pro in that it's running shit that they wouldn't bother porting to last gen. It's going to be goodbye to early leaking of all the Nintendo Switch exclusives. I don't know. It depends how... it depends whether the MiG Switch cartridge dumper is going to be able to read Switch 2 carts. And 2, it depends if and when that happens, it depends whether how much work it's going to be to get emulators to run new Switch software. Because allegedly they're still using the XCI cartridge data format, which, if accurate, is interesting. That's my big question, is if someone takes a cartridge dumper for the Switch 1 and sticks a Switch 2 cart in, will it be able to rip that data? The free roam as a lobby is really cool. I heard if you get knocked out of Knockout Toy, you can just hit a button and you're back in free roam. Yeah, and that's pretty cool. I like being able to just continue in free roam while you wait for the next match to start. Do you think those loadable Switch carts for the Switch 1 will work on 2? Again, tough to say. The MiG Switch carts do, for all intents and purposes, appear to the current Switch as a legitimate cartridge, complete with the, like, the one-time, the single usage certificate data that is needed to look legit. My gut instinct is that those cartridges will work on Switch 2. My suspicion is there is new security features for the Switch 2 cartridges that might make them not work for loading Switch 2 games. But I think Switch 1 games, because it's not emulation, because it is the raw game data and all the authentication certificates, I do think it's probably going to work on Switch 2. Did you play with tilt controls in Mario Kart World, i.e. steering? I did a little bit. Didn't really have any, like, notable thoughts, so I just stopped. Did you play Hogwarts Legacy? No. Hey, if you're new to my content, J.K. Rowling, author of Harry Potter, hates trans people. I'm trans. That's not great for me. She recently donated £150,000 to a legal case trying to take away trans rights in the UK. Literally today, that case got passed. Trans people in the UK lost a shit ton of rights today because author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, who financially profits off of Hogwarts Legacy, paid £150,000 to help support taking away my legal rights in the UK. Not only that, J.K. Rowling has said these two things about Hogwarts Legacy. She has said, A, she sees that Hogwarts Legacy's high sales to her signifies that people agree with her that trans people should not have rights. She views that game selling as proof that she is right to discriminate against trans people financially, to financially donate to taking away trans rights. And B, she has said the money she gets from royalties from Hogwarts Legacy sales, directly she is putting into fighting to take away trans rights. That £150,000 she spent on helping that court case go through that successfully took away trans rights in the UK today, she paid for that with money that she got from Hogwarts Legacy. So no, I didn't play Hogwarts Legacy at the Switch 2 event. It was there. I said, fuck it, I'm not giving any attention to anything to do with a woman who uses her billionaire status to financially work on taking away my rights. That's alright. This is not me being angry at you. This is a, hey, if you don't know, J.K. Rowling's a real fucking piece of shit, and I very much do not support I say this as someone who used to be the biggest fucking Harry Potter fan around. I was midnight launches for all the books. I played Harry Potter in a local pantomime, a Peter Pan performance that snuck in Harry Potter as a character the year the first film came out. I remember all my fucking lines from being Harry Potter in Peter Pan. I was that much of a fan. The second that I found out that like she wanted me to not have rights, and that like she thought that I should have my rights taken away, I was like, nah, fuck her. Anyway, there we go. That's me going on the that's me having my little tirade about Hogwarts Legacy. That is why it's the only thing at the Switch 2 hands-on that I didn't play. It's the only thing I just walked past. I was like, nah. Although, you know my favourite thing about that Switch 2 hands-on event? No one was playing Hogwarts Legacy. Every time I walked past there was one demo station for Hogwarts Legacy, and every time I walked past it, no one was playing. It was the only game that didn't have a queue. It was the only game that no one was playing, and it made me so happy. I didn't download it. I'll post it on Blue Sky later. I have footage, like a montage of every time I walked past Hogwarts Legacy and no one was playing it, and it made me really happy. Did you hear anything from people with larger than average hands on the Switch 2 being comfortable? Been an accessibility problem for me with larger hands using the Switch. It's comforting for over an hour. I have a 3D printed Switch 2 here. Give me a second. Let me show you the size of the Joy-Con compared to the Switch 1. It is considerably longer, and let me line it up properly. Considerably wider as well. It is a much larger in the hand thing. I think you are going to be... It's certainly not going to be worse for you. It will be better. Whether it's good enough, I can't say. It feels noticeably larger in the hands. It feels more designed for an adult hand. I'll try and take some comparative photos tomorrow, but like, yeah. Do you think Alan Wake 2 will come to Switch 2? Interesting question. Digital Foundry had some interesting insights on that. It might have been this week's Digital Foundry Direct that went up. It should run pretty okay on Switch 2, in that Switch 2 supports some of the lighting features that are really expensive to emulate if you don't natively support them, that were part of the reason that weirdly it might run better than the current console ports do, just because it's got some of the fancy new NVIDIA hardware that game on PC was designed around. The reason that the current console ports kind of struggle with that game is they're having to emulate lighting that they don't really have the hardware for. We'll see whether that turns out true, but yeah, Digital Foundry were like pretty optimistic that Alan Wake would probably run better on Switch 2 than would be expected, just because of the graphics stuff it has going on. I'm no expert. I'm tired. I'm trying to remember these things as best I can. Oh, the Gay Fox, thank you very much for saying that I'm doing good work on this. I'm doing my best to share info. El Regino, thank you very much for the 18 months of Prime sub. Thank you. Oh, Sean Starlight says, I've now changed my mind with Hogwarts Legacy because I think that's not okay to take away trans rights. I'm not going to support this game after hearing that. Thank you for being open to listening to that and to hearing that. A lot of people, back when Hogwarts Legacy first came out, a lot of people's response to hearing this was, yeah, but I want to play the Wizard game, though. And to just sort of play it anyway. And that was, like, it was quite depressing at the time. It's nice to hear that there are people who listen to that and go, okay, maybe we don't play the game from the person who's financially supporting bigotry. So thank you. That's honestly really appreciated. Also, let me rewind. It's so uncanny to see the Switch a user menu in the boot up of Cyberpunk. There's a ton of Switch 2 misinformation in general. Your content is nice to listen to and very straightforward. I'm glad. Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation about the Switch 2. I'm doing my best to get this stuff as well communicated as I can, but obviously I'm one person who had a limited amount of time to see the thing, so I can only answer as much as I am able. Yeah, let's pull Metroid Prime back up. I've got maybe like 15-20 minutes. If anyone's got any other questions, I will do my best to answer them before I gotta head off. But I will be back tomorrow for the Playdate Season 2 stream, and for the Mario Kart 8, Mario Kart World Nintendo Direct at 2 PM UK. How's the speaker quality? It must have been noisy in there. Yeah, I talked about this earlier. Let me try turning the audio up for a second just to demonstrate.
Thomas is back on a new planet.
There's just like this background hum that was there the whole time, so it like, take this with a grain of salt. From what I could hear of Mario Kart, which was like the game I got the best chance to hear, the audio quality was pretty good from the built-in speakers. Actually, let me see if I can, does it pick up on video? Do I have one of the handheld videos where it picks up? There's too many other people's gameplay to get a solid listen of it. I'll say this about the speakers. Directional audio was really good. I was able to hear Metroid Prime's not Metroid Prime, brain gone. For stuff like Mario Kart, I could hear when other racers were coming, which side they were coming from really well. Like, the built-in speakers were good at directional audio for, like, me having a sense of where sound was coming from, even in a very, there's lots of other sources of information kind of setting. So I can tell you that the directional audio was pretty good. Let me pull this up. People have been perpetuating a myth that games cost $90 now because someone confused euros with dollars. Yeah, like $80 is still rough, but yeah, not 90. Big yawn. Big yawn. Yeah, even if I can't show footage of it, I might as well talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza, because I've not really talked about that today. Feels very fun in the moment. It's the most fun Incredible Hulk game I've played. The combat feels very Incredible Hulk, but with, like, very smooth maneuver, like, climbing up walls, sprinting around, rolling. Very fast maneuvering, but the combat's very Incredible Hulk. My big concern is I don't know whether with my brain disabilities I'm going to be able to play that game, because the first time I, like, punched the floor, and there was no indication there was any collectibles under my feet, but I found a treasure chest under my feet, I suddenly went, oh god, am I going to have to destroy every single bit of rock in this entire game, just on the off chance that there's a hidden treasure I haven't noticed just below my feet? Will the brain gremlins let me progress the game and not go, yeah, but what if there's a secret behind that wall, until I've destroyed the entire level? I do worry that I might autistic a little too hard for this game and not be able to just move on through it. Yeah, you can reset the area, so if you destroy a bit and then realize you needed it to platform somewhere, you can undo that. My problem is the opposite. My problem is I will want to destroy everything, and that's an unreasonable thing to do. It is not reasonably plausible for me to destroy everything. But what if there's a secret hidden there, though? I'd better do it anyway. And that's my... Maybe it's an unfounded worry, but it's my current concern. There's some stuff like being able to slap the ground to see hidden collectibles briefly for a second through the rock that might help. But, like, I fear I'm going to have the same problem I did with it that I did when I played the day one release version of No Man's Sky, where I get into an unhealthy obsessive gameplay loop with it, and it's not the game's fault, but I just can't have a healthy relationship with the game. There's going to be at least some unbreakable areas. Yeah, the very bottom layer of the level. If you dig down far enough, eventually there will be bedrock that you can't dig through. But, like, there's way too much level before you get to the bedrock. It's like saying, okay, I'll just dig every single block in Minecraft before I progress. I won't progress until I've cleared every block out in Minecraft. It's an unreasonable amount of, yeah, eventually you're gonna reach bedrock, but, like, that's not the problem. On your way to bedrock, there's way too many fucking blocks to mine. You couldn't mine every block before moving on. You see what I mean? Like, Minecraft is such a good example of why I can't just mine it all. Just mine it all until I get to the unmineable bits. That's not gonna happen. ZL and ZR, are they still buttons like Switch 1, or are they triggers now like Xbox and PS? So I'm guessing what you mean by that is, are they analog? Like, do they move, have sensitivity and you can sort of half push them? They're still a button, they're still digital triggers. It's interesting, there was an interview with one of the hardware producers earlier this week, where they talked about, like, we kind of wanted to do analog triggers, but some of our development partners insisted on digital. I don't know what that means. I don't know what developers insisted it, but apparently someone insisted they do digital triggers, so they're still just a button as opposed to, like, a pull thing. But the GameCube controller for Switch 2 does have analog triggers, and that will work for any Switch game. So, yeah. Captain Orc, thank you very much for the Prime sub. Analog triggers are better for accessibility. They are, arguably, but certain game genres just, you lose functionality. Like, in a racing game, not being able to, like, feather your accelerator is just, like, that's just functionality that, like, certain genres are built around, that you don't have the option to offer players without support for analog triggers. And I'm a big believer in, like, don't make analog trigger use mandatory and offer a version of your controller that has digital triggers. But I also think offer a version that has analog triggers. Certain genres kind of need it. I think both of those can be true at the same time. How does the level select work, if you can tell from what you played? Are we talking about, like, Odyssey-sized levels with multiple objectives, or they're more classic in size? So, from what I could tell, and again, I wish I had the footage downloaded. Maybe we do another. I might come on a little early before the Mario Kart Direct tomorrow and, like, show off the Bonanza footage once I get that downloaded. From what I can tell, it was about, like, the tutorial level of Bonanza I was dropped into was probably a bit bigger in size than something like New Donk City, but smaller than that desert level in Odyssey. It was somewhere of a medium between New Donk City and the desert level, in terms of scope. It was definitely more... It was more like playing an Odyssey level than it was playing, like, a Mario 64 level, in terms of, like, that kind of scope. Definitely multiple objectives. There's, like, a clear plot thing you're following, but there's a lot of, you know how in Odyssey there were, like, hidden moons everywhere that had, like, a name to them, and they were in a little objective list, and you could just stumble upon, like, oh, you, drifting between the dunes was one of them. There's a bunch of, like, crystal bananas, and those are, like, your moons. They're like, oh, you beat a boss, you got a crystal banana, and it had an objective name. Oh, you looked under that suspicious-looking rock, and you got a big crystal banana that said, under the mysterious rock. And Donkey Kong goes, ooh, banana. It very much feels like here's a pretty big play space, go find all the hidden, we're not going to tell you exactly where they are, major collectibles. White Hokey, sure, feel free to continue pirating Nintendo games. I'm not here to stop you. Like, it harms me not at all if you do that. I'm not Nintendo. I'm not the Nintendo police. Sustained half inputs are hard on carpal tunnel and arthritis. I always trip up analog and digital no matter the topic. Yeah, I'm not saying there are no benefits to digital. I am saying there are certain genres... There are certain mechanics that you can't offer players with the digital-only analog. digital-only trigger, and it is a shame that Nintendo has moved away from giving players the option of analog input should they want it. How accurate with controls do you need to be for Donkey Kong? It's probably what I'm most excited about, but I'm terrible with aiming. Oh, you don't have to be good at aiming at all. Largely it's like lock-on punch combat. If you occasionally need to throw something, there's a very large area of if you threw kind of close enough, it'll hit. You can be real loosey-goosey with your throwing in Donkey Kong Bonanza, and it'll be fine. It's built around, they want you to, like, keep your momentum and, like, you grab a thing you want to throw and then just, you don't stop and, like, precisely aim it, you get in roughly the right direction and throw and just keep moving. And as such, it doesn't require that much precision, because the game clearly wants you to be, like, flow state. Move, move, grab the thing, throw the thing, keep moving, go, 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 go. Like an Incredible Hulk situation. And as such, I don't think there's anything that's going to require, like, that much precision from you in Bonanza. Terra says, while you're still here, I love how messy this season of Dice Funk is. Unlike the last messy season, I trust all three players. I'm loving Hop's moral complexity. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying this season. It's been work, but it's one of my favorites we've done in a while. I love Hop as a character. Love your hands-on video, Laura. I'm glad, thank you. I'm glad people checked it out. I can't stand modern GameCube controllers mainly because they just don't trigger at all until they're pressed in all the way. That's because most games aren't designed to look for an analog input. They're looking for a digital input on an analog button. Does Prime 4 take advantage of HD Rumble 2? Hard to say. It didn't do so in any ways where, like, it stood out to me. It certainly didn't stand out as much as, like, the clicking of the wheels as you push your wheelchairs in drag and drive. Or the stuff that was in, like, the Mario Party with the shaking the paint can. When doing the scan visor, it did do this interesting... It felt like I could feel the loading spin, like, loading around inside my controller, like a digital wheel filling up, like, electronically. That was the most interesting thing it did with HD Rumble 2 that I remember, was, like, the scan visor being, like, inside my controller. That was pretty fun. Does HD Rumble work in mouse mode? Yes. Drag and Drive, the wheelchair basketball game, both your controllers are in mouse mode. When you push them forward to push the wheelchair, you feel, like, the click, 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 click as the wheel sort of turns around its axis, and that works in mouse mode. So yes, HD Rumble does work in mouse mode. It also is demonstrated in Switch 2 Welcome Tour. There's a minigame where you're, like, moving the mouse left and right, trying to feel where it feels like the rumble is the strongest, and then you click, and it shows you, like, how close were you to correctly clicking where the rumble was strongest. Did they have Legends EA there? No, they didn't. They didn't have Legends EA there. They didn't have, what was it? Elden Ring. They did have, I didn't get footage, but they did have the GameCube games, which definitely do look upscaled. Definitely not 4K or the 4x3 equivalent of it. I would believe 1440p, but in 4x3, is what it looked like they were scaled up to. They had Kirby. It sure looked like more Kirby with crystals in it. It looked cool. It was more Kirby but crystals. Do you feel like the Switch 2 would feel comfortable or uncomfortable to you? What's your opinion? So, I'm a big believer that, like, the Switch, as someone that owns, like, multiple of these, like, PC gaming handhelds, the Switch, the Switch 1 is, to me, the most comfortable to hold. The Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, you know, the Legion Go. Legion Go's too heavy. Steam Deck, not, like, that uncomfortable. It's just, like, a bit bulky in the hands, and that sometimes causes a bit of cramp. The Switch 1's form factor, I really like it being as thin as it is. Its main thing was just wanting to be a little bigger in the hands. Switch 2, great for that for me. It's, like, it's a little wider, it's a little taller in the hands. It's still thin. It feels like what I want I just wanted a slightly taller in the hands Switch one, and that's basically what this feels like. It just feels like you diagonally scaled out a Switch one, and you're holding that. If you don't find a Switch one comfortable to hold, and the reason is anything other than you wish it was a bit taller in your hands, I don't think this is going to drastically change that, but... And again, I never held one of these for more than 20 minutes in handheld mode before going and joining another booth, so, like, I can't tell you I held this for, like, 4 hours and it stayed feeling comfortable. I can tell you about the dummy model, the 3D printed one I had here, but this doesn't have the exact weight and stuff of the finished system. So, like, I can't say for certain. My gut says it's going to be pretty comfortable. They had Elden Ring? No, they didn't have Elden Ring. Sorry, Elden Ring and Legends EA were the two things I wanted to try that they didn't have. Do they have motion controls for throwing Pokeballs? I have no idea. Still can't believe they're giving us original Wind Waker before or instead of the HD remake. They have commented, in their opinion, the fact they're giving us this version of Wind Waker doesn't mean they won't also give us the HD remaster at some point, apparently. That's not off the table. Were there any Pro Controllers on show? Yes. I played Donkey Kong Bonanza, Mario Kart World, the Knockout Tour mode, and Cyberpunk I played with the Pro Controller. The back paddles are nice. I'm glad it has an audio jack on it. It's largely the same as the existing Pro Controller. The D-pad felt nicer. It felt like it recognized like the diagonal directions in a little more of a clicky way than the existing Pro Controller. The big difference is the material it's made out of feels really soft and smooth for a plastic in a way that's hard to quantify. It feels like a really nice material it's made out of. Alright, I've got maybe like 5 minutes before I need to go off and do my German lessons for the evening, and then I'll be back streaming tomorrow for the Mario Kart Direct and stuff. So here's your last chance to get any questions in for today, and then I will be back tomorrow for like the game information streams, and then Friday we're gonna do Bloom and Rage Tape 2, which I wanted to do tonight, but I didn't have it downloaded in time, and that's my fault. And then next week we will come back and we'll get back to playing 1000X Resist, which I want to continue playing on stream. Yeah, were you surprised at seeing 120 FPS Metroid? It was the combination of 120 FPS plus mouse controls that really blew me away. Because, like, 120 FPS looks really nice. It's the feel of 120 FPS that's really special. This felt like modern PC first-person shooter gameplay, in as much as a high refresh rate and a good sensitive mouse, and being able to like properly flick my view around the screen, and keep a fluid image while I did that. Like it felt like this shouldn't feel as smooth as it does on a Nintendo system. It felt like playing a Nintendo game on an emulator, but it's on actual hardware, and that was fascinating. The Gay Frog says, German lessons. Ja, warum lernst du Dutch? My wife is learning German, and once a year I go to Gamescom in Cologne, and it would be useful to know a little bit of German for, to not have to just stumble through in English everywhere I go. Oh, Gem Lolita, thank you very much for the compliment. That's lovely. Tara says, this is great. These streams always remind me how little I actually know about the technical side of things. I have no idea what questions to ask, but having others ask them is really helpful to see what I would find useful. Yay! I'm glad we're helping. Demystifying tech things and making them reasonable and understandable. Yes, I know enough German to be able to point at my wife and be like, Du bist meine Frau! And get very excited about that. After years of Nintendo lagging behind in performance, Switch 2 is smooth as other games, and that's surprising. Kind of. What I would say is, after years of Nintendo, like, lagging in the graphics arms race behind its competition, it's fascinating to see Nintendo go, we're not gonna catch up in as much as we're not gonna try and do the same graphics arms race that the competitors are doing. We're not gonna go for as crisp as possible, as detailed as possible, as photorealistic as possible, 4K 60. We're gonna go in a very different direction, which is staying cartoonish and simple, but leaning into exaggerated animations and making those games be as high resolution as possible with simpler models and push resolution frame rates really high. We're going to ship natively with a 120 hertz screen and get people playing 120 FPS games. So it's like, yeah, it's a cartoony little Mario, but I'm going to go play my PS5 after this and go, why does my PS5 game feel slow and sluggish? Because I'm not playing at 120 FPS. They're trying to go in a completely different route to feel advanced technically without having to beat PS5 and Xbox Series X at their own game. And I think that is it's such a Nintendo way to go about things, to go, we're going to be a different kind of technical powerhouse in a way that's going to be impressive without needing to be technically better than the competition. Cheer as the curtains open. It's, yeah, they really tried to play up the, like, Apple Store opening on iPhone release day vibes. The graphics arms race is less important now, even over the last several years it's becoming less and less important. Yeah, because that's the thing, like, even with something like Cyberpunk, bringing that back up for a second, yeah, sure, it's at a lower resolution. Yeah, sure, it's at 30 FPS. Like, this is an acceptable enough performance that it's like, oh, if, like, this is the bar for, like, compromised performance of a big, ambitious third-party game, this is the quote-unquote cuts you have to make to get it on Switch 2, yeah, I think most things are gonna run just fine on Switch 2. They're gonna run fine enough that people don't feel like they're getting, like, a heavily compromised experience. And that's a great place for Nintendo to be. To go, you know, I play this for a couple of minutes and I stop thinking about the fact it's an inferior version. Going in a completely different way than everyone else in the market is what Nintendo does best. Exactly. 120 FPS games on a Nintendo system is mind-blowing. Yeah, the fact that it's... Because, like, Metroid Prime, I get it, because they designed that for Switch 1 and then went, oh, we got a more powerful system, we can just double the frame rate. Yeah, sure, no trouble. Mario Kart, it's a launch day game, designed from the ground up for Switch 2, and it's hitting 120 FPS, both docked and handheld, at max resolution. It's like... That's fucking nonsense. That's ridiculous. That's great. I love that Nintendo is like, yeah, no, if we're gonna do graphics versus performance, they're both gonna be at least 60, but it's... Here's your 120 FPS gaming. Get used to it, Nintendo nerds. It's so... I did not... Because, like, there were rumors about 2-3 weeks before the Nintendo Direct. There were, like, shipping reports were like, oh... Yeah, this is the screen. It's a variable refresh rate, HDR 120 FPS screen. I thought that was ridiculous. Digital Foundry did. They were talking about the rumors and they were like, "Oh, this is that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound reasonable." Like the experts in the field were like, "Nah, that sounds nonsense." And like a couple of weeks later, now that like the direct has happened and people have gone hands on with it, it's like, no, of course it's real. It's a 120 FPS screen. And Nintendo are the ones designing launch titles to run at 120. Like, that a month ago, that would have felt like fucking bonkers. You'd have been laughed out of the room if you'd have said, both Metroid Prime and Mario Kart will have 120 FPS handheld modes. Like, 1080p made sense, but like... I had trouble believing it when I heard 120 FPS, says Terra. Even now, there's part of my brain that thinks it's an elaborate scam. I played it. If it's a scam, it's a damn elaborate one. The digital version seems overpriced. For the physical version, hold the data, a new faster memory card, and trade potential are reasonable. Yeah. Yeah, I think we're gonna wrap up here so I have time to go do my German. I will be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. UK. 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific for the Mario Kart Direct, and they'll be back at 6 p.m. UK, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific for the Playdate Season 2 game reveal stream. Have a good night, everyone. We'll be back on Friday for Lost Tapes Bloom and Rage Part 2.